Welcome back, folks, to my WrestleRant video series where I give my in-depth analysis of all the pay-per-views that I watch in the WWE Network. Today I'll be talking about the 2008 installment of Survivor Series, my first Survivor Series as a fan. I did not watch it live, I actually watched it the very first time on the WWE Network only a couple of days ago to review here for this show. But it's funny because it's been 6 years since it happened. It took me that long as a fan to go back and watch it because I never really had the accessibility before the WWE Network, so... it was kind of a trip down memory lane. I know all the first pay-per-views that I watched as a fan are always always stand out to you as being special, and that kind of stood out to me. Survivor Series, I mean, the show on paper was not great, but growing up in 2008 as a wrestling fan, it kind of sticks out in my mind as not as an awesome show, but watching it back was kind of fun for me personally. But we'll break down each match starting right now. Kicking off the show was Team HBK, Team Shawn Michaels, Rey Mysterio, and Crime Time, Shad Gaspard and JTG, and the Great Khali against a team of JBL, Kane, MVP, John Morrison, and The Miz. So the match, I mean, both Survivor Series traditional elimination 5-on-5 tag team matches on the show, they weren't random because around this period in time in 06, 07, 08, it wasn't like Team Raw and Team SmackDown or anything like that. It was taking feuds and putting them into these matches in order for them to... I mean, it was kind of a lazy way of furthering feuds, but it made for fun matches, so who's to complain? So in this matchup, we had Shawn Michaels feuding with JBL before they would go on to join forces about a month later with Shawn Michaels. I mean, not join forces, but Shawn Michaels would be first to work for JBL and all that other kind of stuff. So they were enemies at this point in time. Great Khali was feuding with MVP. MVP was on that losing streak. Great Khali had just turned babyface. Morrison and The Miz, the Dirt Sheet duo, I think the World Tag Team Champions at that time are... No, they wouldn't win the World Tag Team titles until about a month later. But they were feuding with the... not Crime Time. Well, they were feuding with Crime Time, but what's the name of their show? Word Up. They were feuding with them on WWE.com. And, of course, Kane was feuding with Rey Mysterio over on the Raw brand. So... There were a lot of feuds going on in this contest. Didn't really enhance the quality. I know this match was announced at the last minute, like a week before the show. But it was fun for what it was. I mean, the second Survivor Series matchup had more history. It was more serious. This one was just kind of a way to kick off the show with some entertainment. Shawn Michaels was, of course, a star, as HBK always is. JBL was, fine throughout, too. I was surprised that he wasn't the last one standing for his team. John Morrison was. So it was quite the rub for John Morrison. And what they thought of him at the time. MVP, I think, was the first one gone. Or no, MVP eliminated, I think, JTG. And then MVP was eliminated by Great Khali. So, there was some fun action here. Not a great matchup. Thankfully, Khali, I mean, he was in throughout the entire time, but his role was limited. And the sole survivors were Rey Mysterio, Shawn Michaels, and Great Khali. So, it was a pretty fun contest. Nothing great, but it was an enjoyable way of kicking off the show, in my opinion. Up next, we had Team Raw versus Team SmackDown for the Divas, not for the men. Representing Raw, we had Beth Phoenix, Mickie James, Kelly, Candice Michelle, and Jillian Hall. Taking on Team SmackDown, consisting of Michelle McCool, Victoria, Marie... I'm sorry, there's a lot of M's in there. Michelle McCool, Maria Maurice, Victoria, and Natalia. So, the matchup as a Divas 5-on-5 elimination matchup for Survivor Series, it was basic as it gets. A lot of rapid-fire eliminations, basically what you would expect from the Divas. Got about 10 minutes, longer than I thought they would. But, I mean, it was pretty bad at points when it was Kelly in there and all these other Divas that had no business being in there. Jillian Hall, for example. But it wasn't completely terrible. I mean, it was okay. It was passable. But it definitely was cringeworthy at times. There was just no story. They would just say, oh, Team Raw and Team SmackDown, here you go. No one really cared. Because like I said before, the brand split, the brand versus brand, didn't mean a lot in 05. It was as strongest as it was ever going to be, at that point in time anyway. But by 2008, Raw versus SmackDown was dead in the water, so I have no idea why they even bothered to attempt to tell that story in this matchup. It was just to get the women on the show. It came down to the women's champion, Beth Phoenix, and the future Divas champion, Michelle McCool, or I'm sorry, not Michelle McCool. She was the then Divas champion. She would go on to lose the Divas title to this woman, Maurice. So it came down to Phoenix and Maurice. Why it came down to two heels, I have no idea. Maurice isn't even that great. I mean, I thought she was good, but she was never as good as like someone like McCool. So I don't know why it came down to Phoenix and her, but I guess they were really high on Maurice at the time. Like I said before, they would go on to put the Divas title on her about a month later on SmackDown. So up next, or actually putting two Survivor Series matches next to each other, I thought was really weird. The fans were dead for this matchup. They weren't going to be excited otherwise when it was placed in the card. But two things. One, it goes back to what I was saying before, that the Divas matches are always number 2 on the card for Survivor Series, or they have been in most cases more often than not. And two, I mean, putting this matchup right after another 5-on-5 elimination matchup, I think is what killed it. The people didn't care about it regardless, but that was definitely a factor. We had just seen one in the opener. Why do one back to back? That didn't make sense to me. But up next, we had the Undertaker versus Big Show in a casket match. Not the most exciting match or the most exciting feud or match too. In the latter half of 2008, it was just for something both guys to do when Edge was out with an injury, and who would come back on the show, by the way, to win the WWE title, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the match was sloppy at points. Big Show can have decent matches, but Undertaker, they just never really had great chemistry together, so it really made for boring matches. This matchup was not, extremely boring, but it was just kind of dull. Casket matches are never really that, enthralling to begin with. So to put two big guys that don't have any chemistry together in this kind of matchup, it didn't work. I know it was one way of blowing off the feud. They would have a steel cage match on SmackDown, I think maybe a week after this. So this was not the end of the feud officially, but it was okay. It was not a great matchup by any stretch of the imagination, but they made it work. The Undertaker went over in a casket match. His stipulation at his pay-per-view, the same pay-per-view, like I've said in every review, the same pay-per-view that he debuted at in 1990, 18 years before this. Holy shit. But that was pretty crazy. Regardless, though, Undertaker goes over, beats Big Show in the casket match. Basically was what it was. Thankfully, did not get more than 13 minutes, so that's decent. Up next, we had our third and final 5-on-5 traditional Survivor Series elimination tag team match of the night, pitting Team Orton, Randy Orton, Shelton Benjamin, William Regal, Cody Rhodes, and Mark Henry against the team of Team Batista, who was consisting of Batista, CM Punk, Kofi Kingston, Matt Hardy, and R-Truth. So again, everyone in this matchup kind of had a rivalry with the other. Matt Hardy was feuding with Mark Henry. R-Truth was feuding with Shelton Benjamin. Cody Rhodes and Orton feuding with Batista. CM Punk and Kingston were also kind of feuding with... Punk was kind of feuding with Regal. And Kingston was kind of feuding with Cody Rhodes because they had just taken the tag team titles off of them about a month earlier than this. So, like I said before, of the two Survivor Series matches, the other one got more time, and the other one was... this one was more enjoyable, I think, but it told a better story, with Orton and Batista and the two having such long history between the two, dating back to Evolution 4 years before this. So that was kind of the whole basis of the feud between Batista and Orton, was kind of centered around the Evolution history between them. But really good match here, I thought. I mean, William Regal was eliminated within the first 10 seconds by CM Punk, so that kind of built towards their Intercontinental title feud about 2 months later. But there was, Kofi Kingston had a good showing for the most part. Not a lot of memorable spots. The opening match I thought was more enjoyable, but I thought this one was better, if that makes any sense. I thought it was better wrestled, because most of the people in this contest were better wrestlers than the people in the first one. But regardless, I thought it was a very good story told, like I said before, when it came down to Orton and Orton Rhodes. It was actually 4-on-1 at the end. It was Orton, Rhodes, Henry, and Benjamin. Batista took out took out Henry with a spear, took out Benjamin with a Batista bomb, and Cody Rhodes came into the mix. He was going to take out Cody Rhodes with a Batista bomb, tagged in when Orton tagged in the last second, unbeknownst to Batista, who hit Batista with an RKO for the victory. So while Randy Orton, unlike in 03, 04, and 05, was not the sole survivor, he was among them. So good win for Orton, furthering the feud between him and Batista. Not a very memorable matchup, but I thought the finishing sequence with Batista getting hit out of with the RKO out of nowhere, I thought was very good. So solid match there, if unspectacular. Up next for the WWE title, we had a triple threat match. Triple H defending the gold against Vladimir Kozlov and Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy was taken out of the mix earlier on in the weekend. I think not the night. I think it was the prior day. It was announced on the website on WWE.com that Jeff Hardy had to pull out due to an injury. No one knew if it was legit or not. I think TMZ and a few other news websites covered it, thinking it was legit, but it actually was not, obviously. But still, though, Triple H and Vladimir would have a one-on-one matchup instead. Extremely fucking boring contest. Why they bothered to push Vladimir as strong as they did, I have no idea. I mean, the guy was somewhat talented. I mean, he was not great, but they pushed him way too aggressively. At least Ryback as a babyface, when they pushed him hard in 2012, at least had some charisma. He was somewhat over. He was very over. Vladimir was not over at all. He got some heat early on, but for the most part, people did not give two shits about Vladimir Kozlov being a legit contender to the WWE title. So therefore, that led to the death of this contest. It obviously did not get any exciting whatsoever until the announcement of that Vicky Guerrero came out, the then SmackDown general manager. She comes down and says, "He's here. He's here. I told you he was here. It's going to be a triple threat match, and here he is." Everyone thought it was Jeff Hardy. Out comes Edge, who hadn't been seen since SummerSlam after being taken to hell by The Undertaker. So Edge comes down. Excuse me. Takes out Triple H with a spear. Before he can get the 1, 2, 3, out comes Jeff Hardy to a big pop. Doesn't take out Edge. He takes out Vladimir with a steel chair. He takes out Triple H inadvertently with a steel chair. Edge spears Triple H, or he spears Jeff Hardy, and then he pins Triple H to get the 1, 2, 3 and the WWE title. So the match itself sucked until the final minute or so, obviously, with the shocking return of Edge. So I thought that was pretty cool. But the match itself was very, very boring. So do not go back and watch that. I thought the outing between Kozlov and Triple H was not good whatsoever. So shitty stuff there. Easily one of the most boring main events in Survivor Series history. I mean, granted, it wasn't the main event, but it was among the main events, and why they thought they could sell a Survivor Series main event on Vladimir Kozlov being involved in the title picture, I have no idea. But the match itself sucked, but seeing Edge return and come back and win the WWE title was great, I thought. It was a nice surprise. Reading about that the next day, because like I said before, I did not watch this pay-per-view live. I was shocked by that. I was like, holy shit, Edge is back and he's champion. I was very surprised by that, but sucky match with a great finish. So we get to the main event. John Cena also returned on this show, but unlike Edge, who was advertised beforehand, to face Chris Jericho for the World Heavyweight Championship. What Cena did to get a World Heavyweight title shot, I have no fucking idea. But regardless, he gets a title shot against the man that they had a feud with in both 2002 and 2005. So these two have feuded on a number of occasions and 3-year intervals, and they did not feud in 2011, so they kind of broke that streak a couple years ago. But so they had a pretty good match. Cena and Jericho have always had good chemistry. You know, they had the story that John Cena was coming back trying to win the gold, and they weren't obviously not going to have him lose in his hometown. But they've done that before, but they weren't going to have him come back his first night in and lose the World Heavyweight title match. They weren't going to do that. They were going to have him beat Jericho to win the gold. Everyone saw that coming. It was still a very good match. It went about 20 minutes. So even though the ending outcome was very predictable, it was still a solid match nevertheless, with a good outing from both guys. And like I said before, you can never go wrong with a Cena Jericho matchup because they always they work very, very well together every single time they clash, and this is no exception. So good matchup here. John Cena comes out victorious as the new World Heavyweight Champion. He did not get the hometown hero reaction that maybe people expected him to, like the Royal Rumble when he came back and got booed. He didn't get booed on this show, but or at least not as much as you would think. But for a returning wrestler, you would think he would have got a bigger pop than he did. It just felt like another match for John Cena. It was a good matchup. Cena's back, wins the world title. Cena wins, LOL. But it was a good match, so I can't complain. So the show was made noteworthy by the crowning of two new world champions in Edge and John Cena, respectively. The rest of the show was pretty underwhelming. So kind of breaking it down quickly here. Team HBK versus Team JBL was fun. It was not great. I would not go back and watch it if I were you, but it was fun for what it was. The Divas match was a train wreck for the most part. Undertaker and Big Show very slow and plotting. Do not go back and watch that. Unless you have a fetish for either guy, but other than that, do not go back and watch this contest. Team Orton and Team Batista I thought was a solid match. Not one of the all-time best Survivor Series matches of all time, but it was good. I mean, I thought it was better than the opener, but it told a good story with Batista and Orton. I'll say that much. H and Kozlov, shitty match. Do not go back and watch that. But if you're going to watch this matchup, at least watch the finish with Edge winning the title and coming back and the nice reaction that he got. And then the main event, I think, it's weird to say, but I think the main event was the best match of them all between Cena and Jericho. And that's saying a lot when Cena and Jericho are having the best match on the show. Maybe not so much for Jericho, but for Cena, it's definitely saying a lot when he has the best match on the show. But regardless, though, after watching, like I said before, it was fun to watch the show in that I grew up in the year of 2008 as a wrestling fan. I mean, I didn't grow up in '08, but that was the first not full year, but it was the first year that I got into wrestling officially. So to go back and watch the show finally in full as a wrestling fan on the WWE Network was fun. But if you're not like me and you didn't start watching in '08 and you're like every other fan and this was just every other kind of Survivor Series for you, I would not go back and watch the show if I were you. There's not a lot of great parts about it other than the main event and Edge coming back. Everything else is just kind of ho-hum and shitty for the most part. But, not the worst Survivor Series I've ever seen, but it was mediocre at best with the exception of like I said before, the surprise of Edge coming back and the crowning of a new world champion. So that being said, folks, I'll be back in a couple more days with my review of the 2011 installment of Survivor Series. Personally, one of my favorite Survivor Series that I've ever seen. But, this show, '08, did not really continue the trend of the very good shows that I saw from the '02, '03, and '05 installments. This show was not really all that good, so maybe that's kind of why it fell flat for me. But like I said before, I'll be reviewing the 2011 installment in my next video. It was a great show, so I look forward to reviewing that. But until then, folks, you can find me on Facebook at Graham Jason Matthews, Twitter at WrestleRant. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Until then, I'm Graham Jason Matthews, and I'll catch you guys in my next video.